Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to cover the 338 Federal. We're going to talk about why a select few people absolutely love this cartridge and why the majority of the market rejected it. Let's first talk about the parent case to the 338 Federal. For those that don't know, it's this guy, the 308 Winchester. Now, the 308 Winchester, easily the most popular 30 caliber cartridge ever made in the world. You can make a very strong argument. It's extremely versatile. Many people will say it's a do-it-all North American hunting cartridge, as long as it's not for big bears. And you know what? There's some truth to it. The 308 Winchester is just extremely good. Very accurate, very efficient. But what happens when we neck it up to 338? Well, let's just talk about the benefits of the 338 Federal real fast. The 338 Federal has incredible barrel life, is extremely efficient, even more efficient than the 308 Winchester. Let's look at some of its performance. You know, the smallest bullet you can shoot from nozzler is a 180 grain. And look at that. You're looking at a little over 2,700 feet per second with a 180 grain. With a 200 grain, 210, and in fact, I'll make an argument the 210 partition might be the best combo for 338 Federal. Probably the heaviest bullet you'll want to shoot as well. We're looking at 2,500 feet per second. Now, could you shoot a 225 grain? Sure. Would it be ideal? Absolutely not. In fact, I would say not a good idea, especially with tougher bullets. It's going to have a tough time expanding. But you're topping out around 2,400 feet per second. So what 338 Federal gives you is, well, obviously a wider diameter bullet, bigger hole for hunting, bigger wound channels, and a 338 Federal gets you really close to 30-06 velocities with the same weight bullet in a much smaller case. Now, personally, if I ever owned a 338 Federal, which is pretty unlikely, it's not my style, I'm kind of a Magnum guy, I would probably think the best bullet option combo would be the 160 grain TTSX. You can get that going over 2,800 feet per second. And I don't know, I just think it'd be a really cool combo. That's probably the heaviest mono bullet I would shoot out of a 338 Federal. I like velocity to make sure these all copper bullets are expanding. And well, I think it'd be extremely silly to shoot a mono bullet at 225 grain out of a 338 Federal. So the question is, how much of an advantage does a 338 Federal have over its parent case, the 308 Winchester? Is it worth it to go up to a 338? Let's find out in GRT. All right, so in GRT, we've got 338 Federal loaded up here with a 160 grain Barnes TTSX. And we just want to see what kind of velocities we can get. You know, obviously at max velocity, your accuracy might not be there, but you're looking at over 2,850 feet per second. Probably around 2,865 is your realistic max velocity in a 338 Federal, which gives you 2,900 foot-pounds of energy. How does a 165 grain stack up in 308? Let's see. Okay, we got the 308 up, and we're going to put it in the same barrel length. The idea of a 338 Federal is that it's a very short, handy rifle for kind of close quarter hunting. All right, we're going to use the 165 grain, not a complete apples to apples, but it's about as close as we're going to get. And in a 22-inch barrel, you're maxing out around 2,770 feet per second in 308 Winchester. So you have almost 100 feet per second advantage with the 338 Federal. Now, one big advantage 338 Federal has over 308 Win is the ability to shoot over 200 grain bullets and not have to go to a faster twist. But in this hypothetical, let's say you have a 1 in 10 twist 308 Winchester. And let's just say you shoot a 210 grain bullet. We're going to be topping out a little over 2,400 feet per second. It's just not where the 308 Winchester shines at all, especially in a 22-inch barrel. But let's switch over to the 338 Federal with a 210 grain partition. And there again, it has 100 feet per second advantage. And as I said, in a Nosler partition, even a measly 2,500 feet per second, I still think that's a really good combo. Because again, this cartridge is not made for long range shooting. I would say this is a 300 and in cartridge. Lastly, I want to compare 308 Winchester recoil versus 338 Federal. And surprisingly, they're really similar. Now, the heavier you go in bullet weight, the more recoil you're going to feel in the 338 Federal. But as far as like shooting a 160 grain, they're going to be almost identical. Then once you bump up to 185 and over 200 grain, it's a little bit more recoil in 338 Federal. As far as the numbers go, you're looking at a 160 grain, around 17 foot-pounds of recoil, an 8-pound gun. And once you bump up to 200 grain, 210 grain, you're going to be around 21, maybe 22 foot-pounds of recoil. So pretty similar to kind of like a 30-06. So why the heck did the 338 Federal fail? It's more efficient, it's faster than a 308 Win, and you can make a very good argument that it's a better hunting cartridge than a 308 Winchester. Well, I think the problem is 338 is a little too niche. There's really only 2 cartridges that have really succeeded in 338. The one in front of me, the 338 Winchester Magnum, and the other one, because of the military, is the big 338 Lapua Magnum. And really, when you think 338, you think Magnums, really fast, hard-hitting cartridges, not efficient little 338 Federal. All right, here's my other theory. When you take a very successful, popular cartridge and you neck it down, it has some fairly good success. However, when you take that same popular case and neck it up, that's where those cartridges go to die. I have a little challenge for you guys. Take one of these really successful parent cases like 308 Winchester, 30-06, and to a lesser extent 300 Weatherby. You could use 7 Rem Mag, 300 Win Mag, all of these really successful cartridges. Find a cartridge that was simply just necked up and see if it actually succeeded in popularity or was successful. You're not going to find one, with exception to one cartridge. So let me know what that one cartridge is, or if maybe I'm wrong, you can find a necked up cartridge that was more popular than the parent case. Let me know. The sad reality of the 338 Federal is no one really cares about the 338 Federal, even though it's quite good for what it is. Why get a 338 Federal when you can get a 308 Winchester that's really not that much worse, or a 30-06, which is extremely similar? The one thing I would love to see is a resurgence making 338 great again. 338 is basically just as versatile as 30 caliber. It has more, stopping power, but I just think it's just a little too much for most people. Let's bring it back though.